Yeah, well, in my new book, I have a chapter, which is Rule 11. Do not allow yourself to become resentful, deceitful, or arrogant. It's kind of the evil triad as far as I've been able to determine. Resentment in particular. It's bad. It's a bad emotion. It's useful. You can learn a lot by noticing that it occurs. Resentment tells you one of two things. One is that that someone's treading on your territory and something needs to be done about it, or that you need to grow the hell up and stop complaining. And it's hard. It isn't necessarily obvious when you feel resentful which of those it is, but you need to figure it out, because you can harbor resentment for unlived life for a very, very long period of time. And all it does is corrupt you. It hurts you. It hurts you physically because it's a stressful emotion. Anger is a stressful emotion. Because your body hyper prepares for action if you're angry, because you might get into conflict. And that's a dangerous situation. And so you burn off a lot of psychophysiological resources in anger. If you're resentful, there's probably something you need to say. There's certainly something you need to figure out. And so you can use it as a guide to further development. It's very much useful to aim at a resentment-free existence. And that means, I suppose, that you're taking up enough space. There's always a struggle between your domain and the domain of other people. Everyone competes for everyone else's attention. Everyone competes for everyone else's time. You compete for your own time. And if you're resentful, it's highly probable that, well, as I said, either you're not standing up for yourself sufficiently, or someone is legitimately on your case, in which case you need to do something about that. Or, live with the consequences, which is very unpleasant. It's not optimal. Sometimes I suppose it's unavoidable. But, generally there's something that can be done about it. Some things, if you don't address them, they just get worse. And I've been able to see where things are going to go. It's kind of like what I mentioned to you earlier, that if I watch someone, I can generally figure out what they're up to. I also can see where things are going. And so, if I walk into someone's house and there are things out of order in a particular way, if I pay attention to that, that's often indicative of something not right in the relationship. Maybe the kitchen's a mess. It's like there's food that isn't fresh in the fridge, for example, or there's packages up in shelves that haven't been opened for like 2 years, or since the wedding, let's say. That's too much chaos in the kitchen. Something's wrong. Well, what's wrong? Well, there's something wrong in the domestic relationship. The bargaining about who does what in the kitchen hasn't been fought through. And so you have to have those fights to put things in order. And if you don't, then, you end up with a worse fight in the future. And so the reason that I call things out, as far as I can tell, the positive reason, who knows what the negative reasons are, is because I don't want more conflict. I'd rather have genuine peace, which is very, very, very hard to obtain. People generally obtain peace by sweeping things under the carpet. I have another chapter in this new book called Don't Hide Things in the Fog. And that's what it concentrates on, is pay attention to your negative emotions. Resentment particularly, it's so informative. You find out where you're immature. Well, do you want to? Probably not. Who wants to find out that? Or you'll find out who's oppressing you. And maybe then you can learn to stand up for yourself. Dostoevsky, I think, said something like, every man is responsible for everything that happens to him and everything that happens to everyone else. And it's a crazy statement, right? It's a crazy statement. And he was a pretty extreme person in many, many ways. But there's a level at which that's metaphysically true, because what happens is that it's failure to act often that's the most catastrophic. It's to not do the right thing when the situation presents itself. And it's very specific. You're constantly in situations where you could do the right thing if you were willing to take a risk that's actually of relatively moderate size. And you know that you could take the risk, and you know that you should take the risk, and you don't. And that happens to people all the time. And then what happens is the thing that they didn't oppose grows a little bit, and they shrink a little bit. And that starts a loop, hey? And you say, well, how do you take responsibility for the world? And the answer is, well, you also have to do it with a certain degree of humility, because what do you know? And this is part of the reason that I'm so opposed to the activist culture on college campuses. You don't teach 18-year-olds to go and demonstrate about capitalism, because they don't know anything, and they have problems in their own life that need to be solved that are local. And the local problems aren't trivial, they're not disciplined. They're not looking at the world in a straight way. They're not taking responsibility for themselves or for their actions, their sexual actions, among others. They're not taking responsibility for their family. They're not looking at how they could contribute to the community. They don't understand the fact that they don't know anything. And so they should be taught to start locally and to put things together that they could put together. To make their bed and to clean up their room and to attend their classes with regularity if they're going to university, because that's part of the implicit contract, and to straighten up the things around them that are actually within their power to straighten up. And then what happens is that if you do that, let's say religiously, which I suppose would be the same as in a disciplined manner, that your realm of influence starts to grow, but it grows in a positive way. Just like you can end up in hell one step at a time. And that's extraordinarily well documented. You can end up at the opposite place of that one step at a time, but it's also that same gradual process. You don't get to leap from being a 17-year-old knothead who doesn't know anything and who isn't disciplined to the critic of Judeo-Christian society. You just don't know enough to do that, especially when you can look at your own life and think about how many things that you're doing that you know are wrong, that you could fix, that you aren't fixing. And that's the crucial thing. This mode of thinking isn't asking people to stretch themselves beyond what they're capable of. It's just asking them to stretch themselves to the point that they are capable of and seeing what happens. And that works. It works. I've had many people write me over the last year, and this is a great thing, really, it's a great thing, who said that they started to tell the truth, or at least not to lie, because who can tell the truth, right? But at least you can not lie. And that they started to put things in order around them that they could put in order, and that, the positive things just started to happen like mad. And they're not nihilistic, and they've got a purpose in their life. And so, thank God for that. And it does work. You are the center of the world. As center of the world. It has many centers. And you do partake in this process of casting the potential of the future into the reality of the present and the past. That's what your consciousness does. And the quality of what you produce is dependent on the ethics of your choice. Your choice between good and evil in every moment is what determines the course of the world, and that's on you. It's like, well, that's deeply meaningful, but it's unbelievable. It's ultimate responsibility in the literal sense. And I think that in order for us to set things right, we have to understand that we have to take on that burden of ultimate responsibility, as if it's not only as if it's ours, which it is, but as if there isn't anything better that we could do. And one of the things that I found so gratifying about the lecture tour that I've been doing is that, and why I keep doing it, the live events in particular, because we've done about 100 of them now so far, is that when I explain to the audiences, and this is especially true, seems to be especially true of men, but of young men, but not so young even, to say, look, you have an ethical obligation to lift the heaviest load you can possibly conceive of, and that's the primary call to adventure in life. And that call to adventure is so worthwhile that it justifies the particularity. Everybody, it's like lights go on, they think, I see. So you need a meaning to set against the suffering and to protect you against that temptation towards malevolence. You need that. Well, where's the meaning to be found? Well, it's not happiness. It's not short-term pleasure. It's not self-development. It's not self-esteem. It's none of those things that are so focused on the individual psyche even. Yeah. It's literally the stumbling uphill towards the city of God with your burden. And people go, well, that's where the meaning is, and they know that because they know responsible people. They know they admire responsible people. They already got that. Say, well, that's what you should become. And they think, and not only that, that's what you could become, because that's what you are in the deepest sense. Yes.